Terry, welcome to the Suffering Servants podcast. It's great to be with you. How are you this morning?
Good. It's early.
Doing good. Yes. Your schedule is quite tight, just like ours. And we were talking about this before. I was really hoping that we were going to be able to do this recording live, and it just didn't really. Our schedules didn't really work out the best way, and then it occurred to me that I'd really kind of like to record actually the video part of this conversation, because I think that you have a lot to say. But the only time that we're available, what we found out, was 8:00 in the morning. And I'm like, I'm just getting up. I'm just getting ready to start the day. I'm like, I've got the big coffee out this morning.
Cheers.
Cheers. That's right. So it's good to be with you. For those of you that don't know, Terry Priestley has been serving with us for. Has it been October? Was it October that you started?
Yes.
So that's, if my math is correct. Math has never been a big strong suit of mine. So if that's, what would that be? Is that 7 months? 8 months? 7 months? That you've been with us at the Family of God, and you have been such a blessing to us. We've been, one of the things that Pastor Hill and I really recognized not that long ago. Actually, I mean, we've always known this, but especially over the last year or so, we've really recognized that we've had a lack of female presence as far as ministry goes, and we knew that. And then Pastor Mark calls me and says, he says, "Hey, we have a woman who's going to be starting the Deaconess program, and she has to do an internship, and we could not think of a better place for Terry to be." And I was like, thank you, God, that we are finally going to have a woman in ministry to be able to minister to our women there, because men and women are ministered to differently. And so you've been such a blessing to us, and so I'm excited for today. I'm excited to talk to you, because you have, like I said, you've got quite the story. And the one thing that I want to begin with, Terry, is just talk a little bit about the Deaconess program. Maybe why, or maybe not why, maybe not yet, but just what that has been like for you. Has it been challenging? What does that Deaconess program look like? Maybe for women or men that don't know about the Deaconess program. What is a deaconess? And then your experience a little bit at Family of God.
So, the Deaconess program, I'll back up for a second. How I got there in the first place was just, I was interested in ministry, women's ministry. And I had talked to Pastor Mark, and long story short, I did not realize there was a place for women ministry in the capacity I wanted to do in the Lutheran Church. And actually, I had thoughts about leaving the Lutheran Church because of that, until I talked to Pastor Mark, and he's like, "I wish you would have said something." And so then I found out about the Deaconess program. And the Deaconess program is, I have the blessing and opportunity to just what you said, is primarily ministering to women. That's the avenue I'm choosing. There are many avenues, but my avenue is ministering to women, particularly the underserved, particularly those facing challenges of life. Unfortunate challenges. They could be abuse, they can be, addiction, just pretty much the women that have challenges, going through life relationally, the whole thing. And so my heart is there, just out of, some personal experience, that type of thing. And we'll talk about that in a bit. But the Deaconess program is a wonderful program. I'm doing an online type of setting. And what it is there's 6 of us across the country, from San Diego to Missouri, Chicago, Ohio, South Carolina, and myself. And so there's 6 of us, and we have such a bond. Even though we've only met once, we've been going through this. I just finished my last term last night. So
praise God for that, right?
absolutely, absolutely. And so it's preparing me right now. We're going through kind of the basics of like, how to talk to people. Where do you hear God in their stories? Is God there? Is he not there? Just different ways of approaching different conversations and being able to engage as well. And for me, this is like completely out of my realm. I'm a nurse by trade, and we're talking two completely different mindsets. As a nurse, I'm like, okay, cause effect. You do this, then you do X, Y, and Z. Well, this is not that at all.
Right.
It's just completely abstract, and you're trying to, just figure things out. And the biggest probably lesson I've learned is you don't figure it out. God figures it out.
That's a great lesson to be learned. I think that's a lesson that a lot of people need to learn, and that it's okay. It's okay
Yes.
to not have it all figured out.
Yes. There's a lot of freedom in that, and it's taken me 3 terms, and I'm still going to learn as we go, is to trust and to give it up. Because probably about a week ago, as I'm heading into the finals of the term, I had my mini meltdown, and I was talking to Pastor Mark and you, as you know, I've come into your office many times, and just how can I do this? I just can't keep up with this. And both of you have said, you're not the one doing this.
Mm-hmm.
And there's a lot of peace in that. And there's beyond much truth in that. And it's just that's probably one of the biggest things that I recognize right now is that trust.
Yeah.
And, he is going to lead me, because there have been times, like, for example, I did a presentation last night, and there were things coming out of my mouth that I'm like, I don't remember ever knowing that.
That's right. That's right. I always say when you finish a conversation, or you finish a sermon, or you finish a Bible study, and you don't remember what you said, that's a good indicator that it wasn't you that said it. That that's the Spirit taking over. And and honestly, I think if we're honest with ourselves, that's a great place to be, because if it was us, if it was our words, if it was our thoughts, nobody would ever come to Jesus, because we don't have that power, right? And so that's a great thing. You mentioned Pastor Mark. Pastor Mark is the senior pastor at St. John Lutheran Church in Rochester, which is where you serve. You're a member. You serve there, and that's also where my wife teaches. And so we've gotten able to bump into you a couple times on a Sunday morning too, which has been a joy for me as well. Talk a little bit about the contrast. So you mentioned that you're a nurse by trade, so you're caring for people's physical needs, and as a deaconess in training, you're caring for people's spiritual needs. That looks very different from St. John to Family of God. And so talk a little bit about those differences and how adjusting for that has been for you.
Well, it's first off, St. John's, I've been there for like 6 years, and that was because I was caring for my mom for 6 years, and that was her church. So that's kind of like how I got to St. John's in the first place. But then, like I said, talking to Pastor Mark when we were getting into this, the deaconess thing, and I told him I wanted to serve the underserved, and like I said, you were at the top of the list. And so it's a very different atmosphere. Like my internship there, I'm doing like confirmation, that type of thing. Socioeconomic status, stuff like that, night and day. It's just spectrum is different. That's all I can say. With Family of God, the environment and the atmosphere there is come as you are. That's the easy. I'm not, and St. John's is the same way, but again, it's it's got its own atmosphere and that type of thing. But with Family of God, when I set foot there last August, before I even started, at first I was like, okay, this, just trying to feel everything out. But I did. I felt like a fish out of water the very first time. And the people there too, they're not going to run up to you and say, oh, hey, how are you? And, that's just not how it is. And that's okay. But, given the differences of personalities and where people come from, I wasn't surprised. And so being able to speak with them, it was very warm. I was very welcome. But what I noticed is when it came back in October and kept coming back, there was a change. It was not that I had to earn my way, not at all. It was just that we've talked about this before, and you mentioned it. Am I going to stick around? Are you going to hang around? Are you just coming to fulfill that? Okay, I did my service. Now I'm going home. And that type of thing. And so immediately Tina, she was one of the first people, of course, that, I met and just bonded with her right away. And that's really how a lot of the people are. And I think if you step back and you just allow yourself to be vulnerable like they are, you can get such a lovely relationship with them, but it's not going to happen right away.
Right.
Where the difference being, like St. John's, people are like, hey, how are you? They see somebody who's, different, that haven't been here before. And they're, fairly pretty welcoming, and so there's big differences. The other thing is too, is like I said, you're talking about two different walks of life.
Yeah.
And, you really are. And with Family of God, like I said, my presence have been more, I don't know if I ever sit down and the whole time I'm there, just because I'm trying to, meet with people and having people come back and having some great conversations with them.
I love that. I love that part of it. Recently we've gotten into playing chess with some of the guys there, which has been fun. And sometimes you forget like, okay, there's other people that are here. And but
yes.
one of the things that I have appreciated about you and the volunteers that do this, there was a woman down there last night that's very good at that. And she'll go and she'll talk with Tina, then she'll go and she'll talk with Stacy, then she'll go and she'll talk with Shelly, then she'll go and she'll talk with and just kind of move down the line until before you know it, it's dinner time, and and then moving down to Bible study and things like that. But you talked about something that I think it's very underrated. And that's the fact that, when we think about service, when we think about mission, we think about building relationships with people, our folks, I don't think everyone recognizes this, but our people at Family of God, they know who's there to stay and they know who's there to check the box. And so when you said you're not there to, you didn't want to earn their approval, but there is a sense of like, there comes a point where the folks at Family of God, like when they accept you as one of them, like there is something very special about that, because they have recognized and they have trust. They what they've told you is that you're somebody that I can trust. You're somebody that I can talk to. You're somebody that I know loves me. You're not just here to get your service hours. You're not just here because you're on a one-time thing. And so when you first showed up and people are looking at you kind of side-eyed, like, this is a new person, this is someone new in our territory, right? Um,
Exactly.
right? You just got to kind of feel it out because that was my experience too. I mean, you said Tina was the first person that you met. She was the first person that I met too, and Tina
Mhm.
literally looked at me. She goes, "Who are you?" Like that was the first thing that was what I was greeted with my first day at Family of God was not, "Hey, how's it going? Welcome to Family of God." It was, "Who are you?" Like it was just
Yeah,
but like that's our people are very defensive by
yeah,
nature, and I think that's part of it too. And then when those walls are broken down and they begin to start to tell you stuff about their lives and you get to learn about them, what you actually find out, and I'm sure that you've learned this, we're not that different, actually. You know, you
mhm,
mentioned different walks of life, and yes, I've never experienced homelessness. Praise God for that. I've never experienced addiction in the way that our people have experienced addiction. I've never lost, I've never had it. I have not lost, friends and family to overdoses. I've not, things like that. But we do have, I do struggle with, mentally. I do struggle with anxiety. I do have, a lot of these. I do have strained relationships in my life. A couple of our deacons have talked about. Different struggles in their lives that directly relate to our people, and once they find that stuff out, Deacon Ron just showed a whole presentation that he did on a podcast with someone that with an organization that he's been working really close with, and our people looked at him differently because they heard things about his life that they're like, oh my gosh, I never knew that about you, and now it actually just it furthers that relationship instead of driving it apart. And I think that's one of the beautiful things about a ministry like that.
yeah. Well, and again, one thing about Family of God is I'll never forget the pretty much the first woman that I was able to connect with, and it was you. You're like, Terry, I need you right
I
now.
need you.
And so we come around the corner, and literally here is a woman wailing, just wailing, crying, and didn't know her, just came on over and introduced myself. And of course, in the tears and stuff, I don't know if she could even see me or hear me at that point. And the beautiful thing is all I did was touch her arm, put my arm around her. And for that minute, she didn't immediately settle down. But you could feel her just relax, and she sobbed and just sobbed. And it was a safety. It was a
Mhm.
safety. It was just an emotional experience. And that's another thing that's so underestimated is the power of touch, especially with our people.
Yep.
You have to think about these are people who have been rejected, frowned upon, just they're the trash, and they feel that. And when you come over and just that light touch and that tenderness, it's everything.
Yeah.
It truly is everything. And with her, just that breaking down. And then we were able to, slowly walk out, of the fellowship area. And we went up to the chapel and just sat for a while, talked for a little while. And, mind you, a lot of people aren't in the best shape at the time. And, um, but you still can connect. And
Yeah.
that's the thing. And I just let her talk and let her talk, and talk about what was going on. And come to find out she was grieving because her significant other had just been killed on the streets. And what do you say to that? You don't. You don't. You just need to listen. You need to let them talk. And once it was a good while, and a lot of it, I hardly said anything. I just let her talk and just kept holding her and that type of thing. And you cannot underestimate that. You don't always have to have something to say. And
Yeah.
90% of the time, it's better that you don't.
Hmm.
Um, you know,
Yeah.
and to get in the way of that, because you would lose a precious moment with somebody. And we are complete strangers. But by the end of that conversation and that experience, we weren't. And I've seen her only a handful of times since, but every time, we see each other, it's immediate.
Yeah.
And what's interesting is she does not seek me. She knows I'm there. And then all of a sudden I'll catch her, I'll see her at the corner of my eye and I just immediately, and just sit down. And, it's just those connections. And, and that's the thing. But what's beautiful is I'm always looking for her. I'm always looking for her.
Yeah.
And I've had experience with that with a couple other people too. There's been other women who've come in. And the thing is that in those times you see that vulnerability, that brokenness. And, I resonate with that because in a different capacity, I had, different issues, but you have that brokenness.
Yeah.
And women, to me, are so near and dear to my heart. That, especially like with Nisi, she was so lost without her significant other, being gone. You don't realize how much we as women, in different capacities, once your husband or your companion, whatever, is gone, you've lost a big piece of you. And yet people experience that all the time. But like I say, in a way like this, when you've got just a handful of people in your life because you're in the life you are, to lose one is big.
Yeah.
So
It's kind of like you didn't have much to lose, and now you lost everything.
yes.
That story, it reminds me of Jesus and the widow of Nain. And this is a woman who is grieving deeply because she's already lost her husband and she's lost her son. And if I recall correctly, this woman that you were talking about, you were describing, I don't believe I believe she has kids, but she doesn't
Yes.
have a relationship with these kids.
Right.
And so there's a lot of similarities there. And what's great about that story, when it says that Jesus has compassion on her, right? That word that, where his heart hurts, his guts, his innards, they hurt, and they compel him to act. And what he does is he doesn't just speak over her. He doesn't actually say anything. He reaches out and touches the body of her dead son and raises him from the dead. I think of the story of Lazarus, right? When Mary is weeping uncontrollably, and Jesus has these, he sits with her, and his response is not to say, well, Mary, death is just something that happens. We have to accept it, right? That's your brother's in a better place. All these platitudes that we've made about death. Jesus doesn't do that, because death is not okay. And what Jesus does is he sits with Mary and he weeps with her. He's not weeping in the same way. He has, these silent tears, but they're tears nonetheless, because he's weeping with Mary. He feels for Mary, and that's because that's what she needed. She needed someone not to fix the problem. Now he will fix that problem, but not to fix that problem, but to sit and to be with her. And I think that that's a very, again, that's another underrated part of ministry, is that I think we, especially with leaders, I know I struggled with this in my first couple of years of ministry. I'm like, all right, I'm here for a purpose. I'm here to speak. I'm here to talk. I'm here to solve problems. And then you realize that the problems that people are bringing to you are, for the most part, unsolvable. Because even if you solve one part, you haven't solved the biggest part of the problem yet. And that can be really hard to accept. And I think just knowing that, having a presence there and being able to sit with somebody that's actually helping in ways that I think that people dramatically underestimate. But yeah, I remember that story, that day, very, very clearly, because I could not console this woman. I was trying. I went over to her and I was talking to her, and she just wouldn't. She just couldn't. So I came over. I was like, Terry, I need you, please, because of the women that come to Family of God. This is one of the main reasons why we were super excited to have you, was because women at Family of God do not trust men. Period. They just don't. Unless it's the significant other, and even then, there's still a sense of distrust for the most part, because a lot of women in our neighborhood are being abused, whether that be physically, verbally, and so their experiences with men are not good. And so even though I'm one of the pastors, Pastor Hill is one of the pastors, Pastor Tim is one of the pastors, there's something different about another woman coming alongside, and that's where you have been, again, such a blessing to us.
Well, you can't possibly know,
Right.
you can't possibly know those feelings. And especially like you had mentioned, because there is a lot of women of abuse, through there. And a lot of times that's where things stem. And, in my own personal story, going back, and it's interesting because, things even for me now come back. And for years, I did not realize that, I was abused when I was younger. I was, sexually abused when I was younger. And, I kept having these thoughts, but it was myself and a couple of my sisters. But anyway, long story short, when that came up for me through the years. And one thing that women of abuse, regardless what walk of life you are, I feel share, is the fact that when you have been abused, that is your idea of love. Okay. The whole sexual part of it, that type of thing. That's because that's all you get love from your parents, maybe, depending on where you come from. Yeah. You've experienced different types of love. But as far as the intimacy thing, a lot of times you just sex, that's what you do. And that's how you get it, if that's all you've known. And that's one thing I can say, that with some of these women, that is what they do, and they get caught up in that. We get caught up in these toxic relationships because that's how we just want that love. It will take the abuse, we'll take the verbal abuse, we'll take the different things that go with it. But then, you're self-medicating along the way, try to get through it. And that's the vicious cycle, unfortunately, with a lot of these women. There's not one person who wants to stay in their situation. They don't. But if this is all they have, and this is their resource, that person is their resource for life and that type of thing. I'm sure, I can't speak for them, but I'm sure they feel helpless. What am I going to do? Where am I going to go? So I'll just drink more. I'll just take more drugs and just medicate myself. And so that's kind of where this connection can come to, because I haven't walked the same walk they have, in the capacity they have, but the feelings are the same. The underlying feelings are the same. And the one thing I want to tell, my draw with this is to let them know they're loved regardless. Yeah. To let them know that is not love. The love that comes is only from Christ. Yeah. And it took me years to figure that out. Yeah. It wasn't until I was in my 40s did I really experience the love of Christ, and unfortunately, I've been married twice. And after my second marriage, living of the abuse, verbal abuse, that type of thing. And doing everything I could, counseling because I wanted that marriage. And it's okay to want a marriage for the sake of marriage. And that was because of that, that I want to say institution, but I hate that word for marriage. But because of the marriage. And so, I fought for it like crazy, but when someone else isn't, and you're still receiving all that abuse, you've got to come to a time when God's like, you've done enough.
Yeah.
You've done enough. And, and he was there. But anyway, going back to that is that the fact that Jesus is there the whole way, even before, by the divorce, going through the times that I was describing about how feeling that the whole, sexual part is where you get your love from. And, you find yourself in places you're like, how did I get here?
Yeah.
How did I get here? And there have been so many times that I can see in my life where Christ had come and he was just like, hey, tugging on my arm. I'm here when you're ready. I'm here for you. And it's like, nope, I'm good. I'm good where I'm at. And I can't, there's countless times that I had rejected his offering to come to me. Well, I was brought to my knees, literally. And with that, and he was there and picked me up and brought me through to where I am today. And the thing is my biggest message for women is Jesus never gives up. No matter how much you reject him, no matter what you are facing, he will wait for you, but he's not going to stop. He will continue to send these people into your life. He will continue to put these circumstances. And one day, it is my prayer that you do accept his offer. Because from experience myself with all of this, and I could go on and on too. But the thing is that once you realize that love that comes, you will never get it anywhere else.
Yeah.
And it's always there for you in whatever capacity. And it's not just, it's in your throughout your whole life. And if you would have asked me, would I be sitting here or would I be a deaconess, I would have laughed. I would have laughed. That was the farthest thing I could ever think of. But fair warning, Jesus is persistent. Mm-hmm. And he will keep sending you into your lives. And he will keep sending people.
And he'll eventually, I think what he'll do, first of all, that's beautiful. I appreciate that even as one would probably self-identify as a lifelong Christian. Even after Jesus gets you, even after he chases you down, pursues you, and actually says, all right, I'm done offering myself to you. I'm done giving the choice to you. And I'm just going to break your knees and take you for myself because I'm tired of it. Right. That's a lot of times how he'll work, because when it comes to us, we're not going to choose him. We're just going to continue to pursue those other things. And a lot of that's because we're broken and our hearts are sick. Our hearts pursue those things. Our hearts know love in a humanly way. And so, and we're not going to naturally accept the love of Jesus because it's unnatural to us. Mm-hmm. So he has to break in and he has to bring you to your knees and he has to say, all right, enough's enough. I've given you enough choices. Now I'm acting and now I'm doing this. And I know theologically we say that, that's from the very beginning. But you know what I'm saying. And, but he doesn't stop pursuing you even after he's gotten you, right? Like, even he was pursuing me when I was a child and I was baptized. He was pursuing me when I was going through when I was going through Lutheran Church and trying to battle between my Lutheran Church experience and the public school. He continued to pursue me when I was in college. He pursued me when I all but ran away from him, post college. He continued to pursue me and say, I don't really care what you want. You're going to go to the seminary. He continued to pursue me even during and post seminary. And he continues to do that even to this day, because that relationship with him is so important. Like we're not just trophies that he's putting on his shelf, right? He's not just saying, all right, I got Terry, let's put her up here on the shelf, right? I got Tyler, let's put him up here on the shelf. He's going to continue to, because he wants to interact with you. And that's a beautiful thing. And I'm so grateful for that. And for you, it's, the things that you have overcome in these many, many years. You said that it wasn't even until you were 40 in your 40s until Jesus was like, all right, I'm gonna ratchet up the tension a little bit and come after you. And I remember our first interaction, kind of it wasn't really an interaction, but you had sent me an email, and because I had the opportunity to preach at St. John, and the text was John chapter 5, which was the man at the pool of Bethesda, right? And the question that I proposed to the congregation, which was a question that Pastor Hill told me, he's like, you need to ask this question. I was like, okay. So I asked the question, and the question is the same question that Jesus says to this man: do you want to be well? And I think that's the question that Jesus asks us all the time. Do you want to be well? Do you want to be with me? Do you want to walk with me? Do you want to experience all the things that I have for you? And and again, our natural inclination is to do what this man does and say, no, you know what, Jesus, that pool is great, and I want to be well, but you know what, there's really no one here to take me there, right? There's really no one here that can get me to where I need to be. And then Jesus is like, all right, enough of the excuses. And then he acts and he brings you to himself. But that was our first interaction. You've told me before that, that God's speaking in that message and in that text, that was something that led you, that was another way that I think that maybe God captured you was in hearing those scriptures. Because there's something else that has greatly impacted your life. And so can you talk a little bit about that too?
Yeah. So just to elaborate a little bit about what you were talking about.
Yeah.
So I didn't know Pastor Tyler. That was the first time I had ever, I don't even know if I met you yet.
Nope.
But anyway, that message was so profound for me because I was struggling at the time. I want to say it was, anyway, I was struggling at the time because I've been hearing impaired since I was, 14 years old. And I had gotten to the point where hearing aids weren't doing it for me anymore. And, thinking about getting an implant. And a cochlear implant. But if I did that, I would be deaf. So once the surgery happened, I'd be totally deaf. And so I kept struggling. And so that message, do you want to be healed, just literally hit me right in the heart. And I was just like, I had to ask myself with that question and sit back, and I really had to think about that. Did I want to be able to hear? Did I want to come out of my comfort zone of being able to protect myself because I could hear what I wanted to? Sometimes I couldn't hear anymore, but my world was very predictable and I had control over what I could do and not do. And if I did this surgery, one, it was taking away my ability to be in control. because, like I said, I could choose to hear when I wanted to hear. I mean, I still have that capacity now, but it's completely different. So I really had to think about that. But also that comes with it. It kind of goes back to what I was talking about too, is the things in my life. If I did I want to be healed from that? Did I want to be healed from those, like the memories of the abuse, the memories of failed marriages? All of those things, it goes to a larger question, not just physical. It goes to a larger question. Do you want to be healed? Do you, and I'm inclined to say everybody does, but to walk that road. And one thing you have to think about is when you say yes, and particularly you say yes to Jesus, you cannot be prepared for what he's going to put in front of you. You have no idea.
Mm-hmm.
Because with relation to this, just of my hearing and that type of thing, so I finally made the decision to do it, because if I was going into the program, I couldn't, in the capacity I was, get through school and all those things. So, and when I did that, I was thrown into a world I never knew. I was bombarded by different sounds, and yes, it was wonderful, and people are like, "Oh, that's got to be great." Well, yeah, no, when you,
You're
one of
hearing
my
things
biggest
that you're like,
fears-
what is this? What is this?
Well, one of my biggest fears was I could protect myself from the world because
Yes.
I could choose, and I had this conversation. I don't know if we had the conversation, but I know I did with Pastor Mark. I said, that was one of my biggest fears. Then I was being thrown into the world in a way that I'd never been before. And I wasn't sure if I wanted to be, did I want to hear things I didn't want to hear? Did I want to hear conversations? Did I want to hear all these different good, bad, all these things? So there's a lot that went into that. Because you don't realize, what all that would entail. But anyway, that's my train of thought. And,
That's all right.
but anyway, with that is that gift, and not realizing that part of this was all the preparation, that when I said yes to Jesus, that this was all part of the preparation of getting to me to where I am today. And it's not just about hearing, it's about being healed and really digging deep. And that's not something you do on your own. Yeah. And that's something you can't do on your own. And, we've talked a little about, I've been in different multiple relationships. And so, what I realize is sometimes I'm going back to, sometimes what we think is love is just survival, and you're going through these things to survive so you don't have to deal with yourself. And when you choose to make that decision it's work. And you can't be prepared for that, and you don't need to be. And again, all I can say is that Jesus is there with you. God is there with you the entire time. And all you have to do is just lean into him, but also be prepared for the surprises that come with it, for the roads you're going to walk. I never would have thought the friendships and stuff that I have come to know at Family of God, and the people that I have just really been able to connect with, they are family. Yeah. And that is just the perfect name for that place, is Family of God, because everybody is family. People notice when people are missing. and that, and all of that. And like I say, I can't go back to enough of how they are there for us. And like you had talked about, they would do anything for us. I know they would.
Yeah.
And we would for them. And it's just those, relationships that we have. And the first time I taught Bible study, I told a little bit of the story. And you could see how the connection with people, that they see that you're vulnerabilities and that you are. And, they don't even know half of what it is. And, but it's just that whole connection that you have, that they have that trust.
Yeah. I love hearing about how God has worked in your life, and just that question of and it kind of, because as Lutherans we don't believe that we decide to follow Jesus, right?
Mm-hmm.
And so it is interesting when that question is posed, because that comes right out of the mouth of Jesus, right? And it's like, okay, so he is asking you, do you want this? And like you said before, it might take it's going to take it, because we say nope, I'm okay. You know what, I like having the ability to choose, and sometimes I wish that I had the ability to be able to turn off my ears at Family of God. Because you'll be sitting there and you'll just hear something out of like way over there. I'm like, oh man. But because it's easy. It'd be so much easier if we could just, you know what, I want to tune out. I don't want to listen to this. I don't want to listen to this conversation. And so, yes, when you, quote unquote, for lack of a better term, when you say yes to Jesus, when you say, yes, Lord, I want to follow you. Yeah, I like how you worded that. You got to understand what's actually in store for you. And I think one of the things that I mentioned in that sermon, if I recall correctly, when Jesus calls you to follow him, he's going to lead you to the cross. He's going to lead you to death. But it's only through that death that we have life. And that is a beautiful thing. The road to get there may not always be beautiful, but you're with, to quote one of my favorite Lutheran hymns, you're with your beautiful Savior. Then that part is beautiful, is taking that journey with a God who loves you and cares for you, and is very intimate with you. He's interactive with you, right? You talked about that, the importance of physical touch and relationships. That's how God interacts with us too, right? He reaches down. We're able to reach out and touch him in the sacraments, right? And that's something that is just so awesome about what we get to do and teach in ministry. So I want to ask you, and with all that like kind of in the background and kind of your experiences and how you got to where you are, I do want to ask you if you know where you go from here. Like, if Terry Priestley has her say, and understanding that I've learned this, God doesn't really care about my opinion, and if Terry Priestley has her say, where do you go from here after the Deaconess program is completed? Because you still have another year, 2 years, 3 years, right? Is it 3 years? 3 years, yes. I remember completing my first year of seminary. I'm just like, oh my gosh, I have 3 more years of this. You got to be kidding me. But what is it like? What is it that you want eventually? Like, what is it that you see yourself, whether it be with a ministry like Family of God, whether it be with St. John? It may be maybe even something like, we're going to take something at St. John and make it specifically for women who have been in abusive relationships or something like that. Like, have you thought that far?
To be honest, no.
Okay.
I mean, how can you not, right? Yeah. But I have learned, actually, really just through what we have been talking about, I can plan all I want to. I can have all these thoughts I want to. But I need to listen. My hope is I want to continue to serve the underserved. and I'd like to, in my capacity, grow more in that area. What that looks like, I don't know, because I still have 3 years. It's going to go really fast, but I don't know where I'll end up. It's hard to say, because I know obviously I must stay in this capacity, but I guess it's not that I'm sitting back and just like coasting, but I know it's going to change. It's going to, put it this way, it's going to unfold in the time it unfolds.
Yeah.
That's all I can say. I know I will be in this capacity of women. But where I end up is the big question.
Yeah.
It's going to be, I can see myself a family of God, and at St. John's, depending on where we go with that. But I know my focus is to serve women and to serve the underserved. And, even like we say serve women, I have, also had some interaction with some men too, which has been a surprise to me.
Yeah.
But
Positive and negative.
What's that?
I said positive and negative.
Yeah. But, it's nice because it does. It gives, a little bit of balance, even though it's different. But anyway, going back to that. I don't know, like you had said, and Pastor and Pastor Jim had said, I don't know if you can leave family again.
Yeah.
That's the thing, is that people don't understand is there's such a remarkable group of people, and there's so much more that is connections to be made. And one of my favorite sayings, and that I am truly thank God for, is God loves you so much He doesn't leave you where you are.
Yeah.
And truly thank God for
Yeah.
that. Because going back to where I was, I am so thankful. I am so thankful because of that. But as far as going back to moving forward, to answer your question, I can't answer that right now.
and that's perfectly okay. People ask us that a lot as far as Family of God goes. Both me and Pastor Hill and us individually, right? What comes next for us? Particularly when they ask me, because I'm a younger pastor, and they're like, what comes next for Tyler? I'm like, well, I'm here now, and right, so like. And then they'll ask the same question about Family of God, and they'll be like, well, what comes next with Family of God? And every time that Pastor Hill and I have tried to figure out where Family of God is going and what that future is, and even when we think we know, God will a lot of times say, I appreciate your opinion, but here's what I'm going to do. Or that's nice, or that's cute, and kind of pat us on the head and say, but this is what I'm going to do instead. And that's I think that's okay. And I think it's okay, and actually probably encouraged, to have that mindset where I'm going to serve where I'm called right now. And because ministry is a very present thing, I get really upset sometimes, and I understand that in ministry, especially in the suburbs, with churches like St. John, churches like Christ Our Savior in Livonia, which is another one of our big supporters. There does require a little bit of future planning, but I think sometimes that can become an idol, where you become so focused on what comes next that you don't focus on what's happening now.
Yeah.
And if we're so focused on, okay, what happens next, there are people that come into Family of God all the time that if we're focused on what comes next, we're going to miss them. They're going to go if we're trying to bridge the gap, so to speak, and we're trying to get across to the other side, people are going to come right under the bridge, and we're going to miss them. And so it's important, I think, to just remain in the present. And I think that you spoke to that pretty well.
Well, and that's what Jesus asked for us.
Yeah.
You
Oh
know,
yeah.
do not worry about tomorrow, for tomorrow
Yeah.
has enough trouble of its own. You know, and that's the whole thing, and not to remain in the past. He wants us right here.
Yeah.
And every time I've made plans or thought I had, they don't quite turn out that way. Or like I said, I never thought I'd be here.
Yeah.
And this was not my doing. So, and through that, it's just finally, it goes back to, there's so much to be said for that surrender. You need to surrender. And the blessing that comes in that surrendering, and the work that God will do in that surrendering. And your life is going to change, regardless how you even see that. But it's in that surrendering, it's in that rest, that there's so many blessings that come with that. And it sounds crazy, but your life will change dramatically. But there is so much rest in that. And it's not like you're walking away and say, okay, he's got everything. I don't have to do anything. That's not it at all. It's the fact that if something doesn't work out, or if something does work out, that it's his. And if it's for our good, then that's great. And sometimes he takes things away that you didn't want taken away, you know.
Yeah.
And and with that, but it goes back to that, and there's a lot of freedom with that, there's a lot of comfort with that, and those are lessons that I have learned so much along the way, because kind of going backward a little bit, in some of the relationships I was in, and searching for that love before I really knew Jesus, is that there were so many toxic relationships. And I've had some that were actually like 8 years, but I didn't know at that time that they were toxic. But had I had listened, or I had allowed God to do his thing, I wouldn't have been there. But you can't go back after, shoulda, coulda, woulda.
Yeah.
But the blessing is that you see him now. But going back to planning for tomorrow, yes, thoughts are great. But like you said, what you said about, that's great, guys. But, this is my plan.
Yeah. Yeah. That's right.
So it's just, that's one thing to remember is we don't always have to have the answers.
Yeah.
And to let them play out is a big piece.
Yeah. Nor we don't always have to have them, nor do we even come close to the answers, especially when we try to. I find that when I try to come up with an answer for someone, especially in like a really difficult situation, my answer is rarely helpful because it's coming from me, and it's not coming from God. And so if we just let God do what God does, it always works out. One of the things that it works out for his purposes and his glory. It doesn't always work out for our personal good, but it does always work out for the good of the kingdom, right? One of the things that one of our board members used to, I don't remember if you met Pam or not, but Pam used to serve on our board, and she recently, a couple years ago, got married and moved up to Ludington. But one of the things that she always said in our board meetings, when we were wondering about, okay, do we have enough money for this? Are we going to be able to do this? Should we do this? She would always say, God will figure it out, and if it is something that God wants, he'll provide the finances for it. And sure as my grandfather used to say, sure as you know what. And sure as heck, right? That's what happened. Family of God wanted to move. We were thinking about moving into a building, the building that we're in now. The task seemed insurmountable, being able to raise $240,000 in a span of 60 days, and we were almost to $300,000 within a span of like 40 days, because it was God's intention and it was God's will, and God provided for us. And it's a beautiful thing to rest. I like that phrase you said, to rest, or to quote Jesus, to abide in him, right? To stay close to him, to be with him, to essentially allow him, I don't like that word, but to allow him to do what he wants to do, to have his way with you. And that's to not leave you where you are. It's to not leave you wallowing around in your sin. It's actually to bless you and to love you, and by blessing I mean to lavish you with grace and mercy and forgiveness. And that's an awesome thing. Before we begin to kind of wrap up, Terry, I do want to ask you one more thing.
Mhm.
It's very obvious to me when, in talking to you, when we're talking at Family of God, and we've had some very vulnerable conversations, both from my end and from your end, which I've greatly appreciated. It's very obvious to me that you are passionate, and that the relationship that you have with Jesus is so close to you, and you recognize how much that it means to you. And it just radiates from you. And I have such an appreciation for people, not just women, but people who, like, whenever you have that conversation, like, some people will say, oh, man, that guy just always talks about Jesus. That guy just can't stop talking about Jesus. That guy, like, he's just, like, you probably met those people. And to me, Terry, you're one of those people. And my reaction is not, I can't believe that she just always talks about Jesus. I look at that and I say, I love that you love. I love that you love Jesus. I love that you understand, and whatever we can understand about it. And just I think it hits differently for you sometimes, because you understand where you were and where you are now. Is that a fair assessment?
Oh, yeah, hands down. And the thing is, too, is like I said, I never knew Jesus. That was the thing.
Yeah.
I knew of him as a kid, and that type of thing. But when you experience that pursuit, and that's what it was. When you experience that pursuit, and you didn't know it at the time, but when things come together and your life changes, and not always ways you want them to, and in tough ways, and don't get me wrong, that's what Jesus does. He's not going to roll out the red carpet and say, hey, come on,
Right.
come with me. I'll send the limo for you.
Right.
Well, it's not going to be that way. It's going to be one of the roughest roads you will ever walk. But the amazing thing is, you don't realize you're walking it until you look back and go, whoa.
Yeah.
How did we get through that? How did that, he got through that.
Yeah.
And that's the thing, is, like I say, is that to have that confidence, he's never going away. He's never going to leave you. He's walking alongside of you and having that. And the thing is, but he's also making you face things that he knows you need to get rid of. You may not have known you need to get rid of those things that are buried so deep that you didn't even realize. And you're like, oh, forgot about that. And he didn't. But the thing is he walks with you. He is there right when you are at your most vulnerable, because he laid that at your feet and said, we need to talk about this. You need to work with this. He is there. But what's amazing is that it's done in such a way that when you work through it, you don't realize. And what I'm talking about too is, just recently I was at my wit's end with school. I couldn't do anymore. I'm working, I'm doing internships, I have all this on my plate, and I'm like, I can't do it. I was done, and I went to pray. And what was so amazing, I think I shared this with you. I went to pray, and I swear he was there before I was, because as soon as I knelt down,
Yeah.
it was just, I was here. I didn't even have to say a word. All I did was just sit in his presence, and it was all okay.
Yeah.
And the thing is that when you become vulnerable, you will see him. And you talk about why I talk about God so much is because when you never really knew him and he reveals himself to you, and because you're bearing yourself to him, it's that relationship. And that's what people I don't think a lot of people understand, is God is not a God up here. God wants to be right here. And if you allow it to happen, sometimes you don't have a choice, because
You don't actually. It's just like God's like, yeah, I'm gonna come close to you.
yes, exactly. You have the choice to say no, because I did that for years.
Yeah.
But like I say, and you talk how much I, talk about God and stuff. But the thing is too, is there's always the world that's with you too, is getting to also talk more, besides with people that, you're in your comfort zone is. That's the other challenge.
I think one of the things, so we have many of our folks at Family of God, many of you know this, the audience knows this, they're in bondage to drugs and alcohol in some way, shape, or form, typically, whether they're recovering addicts or active addicts.
Yes.
But we have meetings. We have NA meetings that happen on Fridays, and one of the fourth step when you come through, I think it's the fourth step when you go through recovery, is taking an inventory. And what that is essentially emptying your closet. And when you empty the closet, you find stuff that you didn't remember, you forgot that you may have shoved in there. But what Jesus is doing and says, all right, we're gonna open this closet, and we may be terrified to open that closet and to bare ourselves. But we forget, number one, that Jesus already knows our true self. Like the things that we're trying to hide from God, like God's not gonna go, oh, didn't know that was in there. Right? Didn't know that was in your closet. That took me by surprise, right? He's not going to say that. He says, no, this isn't actually for me. This is for you. Confession is for you. And the whole purpose of confession, the whole purpose of airing out that dirty laundry is so that God can remove it from you. Is so that God can forgive that iniquity, right? I think it's the psalmist David says, I'm losing my train of thought right now, but he says that I confessed my sins to you and you forgave the iniquity of my sin, right? Because he felt that weight of God, because God is pushing him to confession. And so that's what God does. That's what God does to us. And I guess the last thing that I wanted to ask you was, with all that in mind, with knowing how God has worked in your life, knowing how God has brought you through some terrible storms, and you even said, you look back and you go, how did I even get through that? and you see that Jesus was with you every step of the way. You see that he's carrying you. You see that he's dragging you probably through most of it, because you were unwilling to even go with him. So he just like, all right, I'm going to drag you. It's like that reminds you of that poem, Footprints in the Sand. Have you heard that one? Right, where I walked along the beach and I saw God, and I was walking with Jesus, and at one point I saw that there were one set of footprints, and God says, that's because I carried you during the tough moments of your life. Well, I've heard it said one time that it's probably more accurate to say that you look back and you saw one set of footprints and one set of heel prints that are just being dragged along the sand, because God's dragging you against your will. And But with all that being said, Terry, what would be, if you could tell, if one woman were to come to you and talk to you, what would be the one? And I know there's not just one thing. And knowing you, it wouldn't just be, well, I only have 5 minutes for you. It would be, hey, let's go get coffee and let's actually talk and have a conversation. But what would be, knowing all the things that you've experienced and how in the strength of Christ that you have overcome so much, what would be the most valuable thing you think that you have learned? You've talked a little bit about it. And what would you say to a woman who's going through and has gone through or is currently going through some similar things that you've gone through? Whether it be, do you want to be well? Whether it be in an abusive and toxic relationship? Whether it be, I'm listening to Jesus, but I don't really want to follow him. What would you speak to that, or how would you speak to that?
I think firstly would be asking yourself, do you want to be healed? That was so impactful for me. Because like I say, we get so stuck and even though we don't want to be where we are, we're comfortable. We know how to work that. But the fact is, do you want to be healed? But also, once you kind of work through on what your answer is, I think the greater message is that God is going to be there. He doesn't give up. Even if you don't know if you want to be well, he will continue to be there. He will pick you up in your storms. He will brush you off, even if you end up falling right back where you are. But just understand, he never gives up. He never gives up.
I love that. Thank you, Terry, for just being so willing and honest. The love of Jesus just exudes from you, and I'm so grateful for our friendship. I'm so grateful that our paths have been able to cross at Family of God at St. John, and I consider you a dear friend, and I'm so grateful for the work that you're doing both at Family of God and at St. John. I always tell people that the work that we do is never in vain, right? So even just a conversation with somebody, because one of the things that you asked me one time was, what can I do today? And I said, go talk to somebody, right? Those are things that are not done in vain. God works through that, and you've seen that. I've seen that through you, through conversations that I've had with people. Pastor Hill having conversations with people. All of the volunteers that come to Family of God, the greatest thing that they can do is talk, and you do that, and God is using you in some incredible ways, and that's because we often think, well, how could God use me? Well, when the only thing that God has is sinners like you and me, that's what he uses, right? And it's a wonderful thing when that happens. And so I'm so grateful for that you were able to join me this morning and being so vulnerable and open and honest and really wearing your heart on your sleeve. I think that's something that a lot of Christians don't necessarily do, or they kind of hold back a little bit. You don't hold back, and I love that. I love that about you. So thank you so much for being willing to join me this morning, Terry.
One last thing is when you're faced with that, why me? You need to also turn that and think, why not me? In much a capacity. And the fact that there's so much that in the why me that you can't see. And just trust. Yeah.
Well, God bless you, Terry. And I will see you Monday, right? Next Monday when you arrive at the Family of God, and for another fun-filled evening. And so thank you again, Terry. It was a joy to be with you today.
Thanks.
All right, God bless you.
Heroes never die. Gonna make it to the